out new agendas, but I'll flash what the agenda is.
Tonight I remember because I'll read.
Find this.
This is the.
I know, I'm usually got it sitting between it. How are you, Mr. Bob?
Good.
Yeah. Good.
So there are a couple of new players and players that missed the last meeting, so why don't we just go around the room and kind of reintroduce themselves. I'm Michael Witt, Superintendent of Schools.
Bruce Walbridge, I'm on the Finance Committee in Stowe.
Martina Kenyon, the STEM coordinator for the district.
Bob Sikansky, Bolton Finance Committee, Advisory Committee.
Lorraine Ramasco, Bolton School Committee Rep.
Maureen Bush, Stowe, School Committee Rep.
Dave LeBlanc, parent, the students in Lancaster.
Heather LeBlanc, PTO president and parent of schools, the children Lancaster. My brain's asleep tonight.
Great event last night, that's why you're tired.
Yeah.
I'm Bill Bergen, I'm Capital Planning Committee from Bolton and dad of 3 little kids that go next door here at Fort Sawyer.
So our agenda only has 3 items, but they're important items. The first one is the Massachusetts School Building Authority. I thought it would be helpful for people just to kind of understand a little bit about the building process in Massachusetts because it's different now than it was a number of years ago, certainly different than when the last edition of the high school went on. People need to understand the pros and cons of that because it's definitely something that people have to understand before we go forward. I have some examples of some model high schools to show you so that you can see what other high schools look like, both that have been completed recently enough that they're under MSBA, and I think some of them actually are also a little older that are definitely in 21st century since 2000, but may have been under the old what they call the SBA. And then on the agenda it's called quantifying upgrades, but what we really talked about the last time was getting to a methodology. So I've typed up a methodology to kind of crystallize a draft of that, and then we'll see if we can pull it together tonight so we know what the steps are that we're going to take and move forward. Okay. So let me start with the Mass Building Authority, tell you a little bit about it. Fortunately, I've been through it now twice, once successfully, once not successfully, but regardless, I think it's a positive experience to understand what they're about. The Massachusetts School Building Authority is an independent authority. It's financed by the state by a penny of the sales tax, and so it has a set funding every year regardless. It is a requirement that any building project in the state of Massachusetts related to schools goes through the Mass School Building Authority. So whether we're doing a modification to a building, or we're adding space to a building, or building a new building, we have to go through the MSBA. That doesn't always mean that they're going to necessarily assist in funding any of the 3 that I just talked about, but they require us to go through their process so that we can meet the expectations of a public building. That said, their process is pretty rigid in that they have the steps, and the steps are the steps, and there really aren't many deviations that districts can take. What I'm going to now kind of talk about is as though we were partnering with them, in that we were going to get to a point where we were going to be funded by them for something for our high school. Once you have decided as a community, however it's been decided, that you want to do something. And they very much encourage communities to enter a process with them early, because they're not about a determination. They will tell you over and over again, they're not going to tell us what to do. And that has been my experience in general. They did not say, you have to build, or you have to renovate. But they're going to partner with you, and they're going to, work with you in terms of your methodology. They're going to work with you in terms of the process, and they're going to come up with a determination on their own about what you should do. And then they're going to work real hard with you to help you see the value of their determination. Is that clear? So they're not going to tell you what to do, but they're going to come up with their own, they're going to make up their own mind, and then they're going to work with you to see that there's value to that. To the point where if you want to deviate, and they will make this very clear, if you want to deviate from that, it just means getting funded by them. So, and I think there have been communities that made that choice. But that doesn't forgive the process. In other words, you still then have to continue to follow their process and meet their requirements in terms of different steps of the process, such as having an OPM and so forth. So, that said, essentially this is the process that they map out for us, where they talk about having a district process whereby you, like we're doing now, we're getting to that, we're just trying to collect data. We're just trying to see what are the issues that we're talking about so that we can get onto a page. At some point in the process of this data collection, there may be an obvious direction that we want to take, i.e., we know we need to do something that involves a construction of some type, whether it's addition, renovation, or a new school. At that point, what MSBA likes communities to do is complete what they call a statement of interest, which simply is putting all that data that we collected and giving it to them and saying, we have an interest in doing something. We don't know what yet, but we have an interest. And we want to get on in your queue. Because it's not a first come, first serve by any means, but it's certainly, if you're not in the queue, you have a hard time getting in the queue until you are in absolute need. So they won't quantify that by saying, you have a rating, but they will say that, those who have this more significant need will get addressed first. Once you get into that queue, and before they actually take, which they would refer to as that eligibility period, once you get into that queue, they want you to start a process whereby you actually start working with a project manager, someone who understands the construction trade, someone who understands building, understands schools, so that you're not just having a group of lay folks talking about things they may not have full understanding of the different components of. Once you start making those kinds of expenses and recording them, those can get folded into the project. So for whatever project that comes to realization, you can get your portion of that money back. Then you go through the process, you're in line, you go through that process, you have looked at and found that you have an eligibility period, and they're looking at your project. They actually go through a process where they will come out, they will meet with you, they will review your statement of interest, they will do a site review, they will meet with whomever you're working with in terms of a project manager, and they will begin to determine whether or not your project has merit. And at this point, they will give you feedback as to what doesn't meet their criteria. for consideration. So you're not just, they're not going to come back out and just say no to you. They're going to come back out and give you feedback, and at that point, you are essentially still working with them, and they'll work with you until you have the right information in their estimation, so that you can continue to work with them and stay in the lineup. Once you are in that queue, you then form the team. You see that becomes a project, a combination of those colors, the district and the construction professionals. At that point, we take all of that information from that statement of interest and we create a feasibility study. In many cases, as we just went through with the science lab building, we did the feasibility study and the data collection as one. So in this particular case, we're going to have really two phases of data collection. Some may be repeated at some point when they go back through the feasibility study, but that happens. And then, this feels a little bit out of sorts, but at this point you have, they don't detail it, but at this point you have been invited, after right here, at this point here, you have been invited to participate with them, and so you are now working with them, and the anticipation is that you're going to have a funding for the project by, in this case, the 3 towns, and you're going to have funding from them at some point. They haven't determined when, but that comes later. That's why it's sort of like you're being dangled for a little bit. And you do the feasibility study, which is all on the district's costs. That piece, for the most part, does not get reimbursed. But then schematic design, which does get reimbursed, is done beforehand. I say beforehand. There's actual approval of, out of the schematic design, you're actually then saying what it is you're going to buy, build, add on, renovate. And then you have to go to the 3 towns again for the full funding of the project, whatever it is. At this point, you're going to also get a vote from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, from them saying they're going to fund with you, and they'll give us our percentage at that point, and then we then start the project essentially and go through the detailed design phase. All of these phases along the way they have to sign off on and make sure that they are, we have to give them monthly reports, and that's the project manager's responsibility. Then you go through the construction phase, and then you go through the completing the project phase. And any of you who have built a public building, completing the project phase there's substantial completion, and then there's all these other things that still need to get done that seem to go on forever until everybody agrees they are finished. So that's their process. I have found the MSBA, once you learn the relationships of working with the organization, they're very direct. All of their information is on their website. They're very easy to read in terms of getting the information that's available and necessary. And their funding in this system is during the project. So their expectation is, however they partner with you, their share of the funding will be paid up during the project. So we may and will, whatever it is, have to probably bond anything of any great amount. They bond it, but they're bonding all the time, and so they will just fund the project, their portion along the way, and always pay their portion based on monthly reports, and it'll be done.
So we don't have to actually pay the whole cost and wait to be reimbursed. They will fund the project as construction is occurring.
So essentially, we bond the project
For the
for
full
the
amount?
full amount.
Oh, okay.
And they pay their share along the way, we pay our share along the way, and then we get the 20-year debt to pay off the bond, to pay back the bond.
No, you lost me on that one.
Okay.
So, we have to bond the entire project.
Right.
And they give us, so now we've got all the money we need to do the project.
Right.
And when do they give us money back? Over the next 20 years?
No, monthly during the course of the project.
Okay, so if they take on 30% of the project, 30% of the entire project will be paid off. They
Correct.
will have given us that, but when we go out to bond, we can't use that money to pay down the debt. We can't prepay the debt the way we borrow.
No, all of the money that they pay is payment for the bills that come in for their share. You're right, we can't use their money to pay down the debt, but essentially I say we bond it, we actually do a ban for the term of the construction process, and then we do permanent bonding afterwards.
Okay, Okay.
So,
okay. So you do a ban which is renewable every year.
exactly,
And then you bond the unpaid portion when the project is
Correct.
done. Okay.
correct.
Okay.
To keep our bonds and bans
Yeah.
correct order. So it's a pretty simple design in terms of a process. It works, I think, fairly well. They will visit the project and be partners during any construction meetings that you have, so that they have a full understanding of what's happening. And in some cases, public projects have a life of their own. So the state has a vested interest in making sure that they go well, and that, I found them to be a good partner in that regard. At least the two projects that I've worked with them so far, it's been very successful in that regard. So that's the MSBA. I want to I'll bring your attention to it. I thought I could go into it in more detail, but they won't let you, they don't show you anything unless unless you have a project in hand. So here's the enrollment projection piece. There's actually a process that they use. We will have to fund our own project enrollment process, but ultimately they'll want us to use theirs. We had, for example, on the recent project in this town of Stowe, we had a number of meetings with them around what our advisors, both in terms of our architects council was, and we also hired other enrollment specialists, and ultimately it went with what MSBA said. They made very little movement in terms of enrollment. What they did allow, which was very nice, was some compromises around different spaces that were already existing because it was an ad reno, which actually, in the end, in terms of total usage of the building, got us closer to the enrollment that we were talking about. So, as I say, they will work with you. I think they're fairly good about that. There's a maintenance and capital planning component. They want to know that with their investment, they are also working with a district that will take care of their buildings. We've done it before, so we already have that pretty well solid, and so I don't see that as a big obstacle for us. The OPM report is the project manager report. This is something that the project manager, who is not a member of the staff, we hire them on strictly for the project. They are usually through the RFS process and request for services process through that the state has designed for procurement, and we hire a firm and they assign a principal PLE to come and do that. And again, that's extremely helpful because you want somebody who knows buildings, construction, knows the trades, can work with construction companies, can work with architects. They have language all their own. I know every profession does, and so you learn a whole new vernacular when you work with construction trade. Then this is the pro-pay. They call it's pro-pay. Essentially, again, they pay as they go, and when we're done with the project, they're done paying, and that works out very well. It helps with districts and towns in terms of cash flow, and so I think if you talk to the town of Stowe, I think they found it very successful. And then lastly, this is just the statement of interest again. That's essentially the grant application. And my understanding, I was trying to find it on here to be clear about this, is they do almost an annual request for proposals. So when to get in the queue obviously will be part of something we'll discuss, but I feel confident that it will be an annual opportunity, and if I find out differently, I'll talk. I'll certainly tell us about that. But my sense is that it is a year event.
When we went through the science lab project, there was money that they had, which was for a specific purpose from their
Right.
point of view. Do they kind of change their focus year to year, or once you get in the queue, you just move along through the queue with everything else, or are there kind of fads in
So
their
this is
funding?
their main priority.
Yeah,
That particular grant opportunity was because they had a series of bonds that essentially they had not used up all the resources. Instead of giving it back, they decided to use up the resources, and they created that project. I think they will continue to do that kind of thing. It'll be what they are hearing, seeing for need. That particular piece came out of all the high school projects that they were seeing coming toward them. That's what they identified as the most significant need. And so for schools that might not need to do a wholesale renovation, but just that piece, they thought they were helping out. Questions?
I guess as part of that process, if you kind of had a plan saying, okay, we want to do X, Y, and Z, I'm just kind of curious how it kind of goes. Is there a potential of them saying, well, we agree with half the stuff that you want to do, and we'll fund half of it, but if you want to do the other half, you're on your own? I'm just curious how that process kind of works.
So when they come and when we file our statement of interest, the statement of interest is supposed to be all about what our needs are and our current conditions. We can't even say, and based on this, we want to do something. Once we submit that and they start working with us and do their site visits and their review of the data, and then we go through that feasibility study process, they're going to come back and they're going to be here at the table essentially, and they're going to say, based on what we're seeing, all you really need to do is fix your cafeteria, and really you got a great high school. And even if we're pushing to do something more grand than that, they're going to say, no, you really only have to fix your cafeteria. And then we would have to make decisions as to whether or not we were going to go by ourselves. And then they wouldn't even help us with the little cafeteria piece either. They would say, okay, we're just not going to invite you to participate, and you can go on your own. But we still have to follow these steps.
Okay.
So it's sort of like it's our money, so you better like what we want you to do.
what about the possibility that we say we want to do X and Y, and they come in and say, okay, but we want you to do Z and a couple other things too?
Well, I have heard of circumstances of them. Let me speak about our experience in Stowe. We ultimately felt very strongly that it should just be a new building. And they came back and said, no, this section of the building that exists is a good building and should continue to exist. And so ultimately, we felt strongly enough that if we wanted the project to be successful at the polls, we needed their funding partnership. That's what we did.
Okay.
So I mean, it's a strong-armed tactic, if you will. Their partnership in our case will be probably very close to 50%, maybe 49, maybe 51. It's hard to say no to that.
But they could be raising the overall cost as well as scaling back.
And what they'll say there is they feel that based on their experience with building, if you don't address this, then we won't let you come back in 10 years to address it. Because we told you so kind of attitude.
Okay.
So it's
It's a two-edged sword.
it is definitely. I think at our high school, for example, it'll be interesting to hear how they perceive our gymnasium and our auditorium because they're in such good condition. So no matter how we perceive some of the programmatic needs and how that would fit into an overall ad rental, I think they would be saying it's got to be an ad rental because those pieces are so good. And I don't know that I would disagree with that. So I thought this was important to bring up because again, it really, because I do think it's an annual process, we don't really have to, and the timeline for this committee, I think goes through essentially two of their cycles. I'm not feeling any pressure to get in there any faster. 6 months from now, if we feel differently, the window opens generally around Christmas time. They usually have a December to the end of January time frame. They publish in December and they want it returned by the end of January. So, just kind of park that in the back of our heads in terms of our timeline. So I was thinking, how best was I going to be able to show you what other high schools are looking like these days under the MSBA? I think I did not say this, but part of the redesign of how schools are built in Massachusetts came about was through a realization that there needed to be efficiencies in how the money was being shared with the 351 communities across the Commonwealth. And part of that is not letting every community sort of design their own experience of what a high school looks like when there are probably, as we'll come to find out, 3, 4, 5 models of high schools that with some, unique facades that make it perfect for community X, but not necessarily community Y. They don't, because high schools pretty much look the same for every community. So they have what they call the Model Schools program, where they have, I think it's 5, maybe 6 now, general concept plans from, I think they are 6 different architects, that when after the feasibility phase happens, they will share with us and say, one of these 6 really should be what you're thinking about. And how would you attach that to your property in whatever format and so forth. So, while they don't come right out and say it here, Hudson High School was in the running for one of the model high school designs. And if you haven't been there, I think that's one of the ones that we should go to look at as being on our a short list. But here are some examples of schools that are part of the model school program done since 2005, completed since 2005. You know, you're not going to see a lot of differences. An auditorium is an auditorium is an auditorium. But again, in the model school program design, what they've done is you buy the whole thing.
So when you say the whole thing, it's about the architecture of the building, is it about the
It's
technology?
the flow of the building, the number of the rough number of classrooms.
Right.
Most of the model buildings are essentially pod classrooms. So if you're a 600 pupil building and you need 6 pods of 100, you know, it can work. And if you need 10 pods of 100, it can work. You know, so those are the designs of the building. The differences are in some cases where they positioned the relationship of certain things. Like in some of the models, their model is that they have, you know, each grade is separated. In some of the models, it's the departments are by department, you know, so the pods are by department. So those are things, and that has differences for costs in terms of how the building is laid out. This is an enviable picture, I think, right? A large cafeteria.
Michael. It's painful just to show it to me.
I know. So, you know, we have a roughly 300 pupil cafeteria for 1,000 student high school. This looks probably like it could seat 500. They haven't eliminated lunch rotations. Here's the exterior. You'll see a lot of commonalities among all of these. I mean, there aren't that many differences to them. It's sort of like driving through a development. You know, you have six different floor plans to choose from. Obviously, you get to choose your materials. So your brick facade, you know, whether you want brick or wood, clapboard, or those types of things. They all have to be, working with MSBA, they all have to be meet the latest what they call CHIPS requirement, which means that they have to essentially be a green building as much as they can be, and the property has to be a green, used green materials. So porous pavement is required in the the areas where people drive. The lighting is, well, it has to meet obviously the local ordinances. It also has to meet the energy ordinances, and so.
So the implication there is that we'd have to tear up the asphalt at the high school.
It's very possible, depending on the,
Okay.
because they'll only allow a certain amount of tar.
Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm just trying to make sure I understand
Yep.
fully what you're saying.
Yep.
You know, even if it's down at the far end of the school, we
Right.
gotta tear up the asphalt over by the old tennis court.
Right.
Respectively.
Right.
Okay.
Here's the main corridor. One of the things you'll notice about these buildings right away is they all take advantage of light everywhere and every place they come in. And you know, if you haven't been in our building recently, I mean, that's one thing. Certainly at the entrance, it really looks like we do, but we really don't, because it's such a closed area. Our cafeteria takes advantage of light nicely. One of the things, there's this high school, I believe they have Whitman Hanson on
How
here.
old is this school now?
So this school, I believe, was opened in 2010. Did it say anything? I believe it opened in 2010. I'll double check, but I think it's 2010. Get you down for another high school. I'll just show you a couple of these. Well, they're elementary schools. You'll see they're not afraid of taller buildings. So here you have essentially a 3-story building. That's more and more common in terms of the schools that they're building. For lots of reasons. Again, to make them model schools, they have to fit in urban as well as rural areas.
We don't have a height requirement in Bolton, do we?
I'm not aware of one.
No, never heard of one.
You know, we ran into it in Stowe. We couldn't go up 3 stories. So, I mean, it was going. We could have. It was going to require the town to then buy a ladder truck and so forth. So there were other costs that people didn't want to go into. And so a couple of others in here. There we go. Yes, that's what it's called. This particular layout, again, is pods to the left of the picture. That's the beginnings of their field house. This is right here is the beginning of a horseshoe, and all around the horseshoe is their open concept cafeteria, and then to the right is essentially all classroom.
Is that a drawing or a picture?
This is a picture. I think it,
Yeah.
Shadows look weird.
yeah. But I do think it's a picture. Looks just like it. So here's the interior of that horseshoe that I was just saying. Yeah, it almost looks like it was going to storm any minute, right? With the shadows the way they are. Here's a middle high school combination. That's showing off. One of the things that I notice in the schools that I've been in, and I don't know if Perry or Martina, you've noticed this as well, they do a good job of trying to create spaces for exactly what you want. So, for example, and I saw this with our building of the elementary school as well, we were adamant, and they were adamant, you don't want to use your open space for storage, right? So you walk into older schools and, you know, hallways are where TV carts are stored, or, you know, classrooms get loaded up with 3 or 4, or offices get loaded up with 3 or 4 TVs because there are no closets, there are no rooms dedicated to storage. They were very good about recognizing that, and they have taken that to heart. And also, you know, for a variety of reasons, most importantly, safety, that you weren't creating fire hazards, exit hazards, and drills and so forth. But also because for security reasons, they wanted to make sure that material could be stored properly, you know, not just TVs and things, but science equipment, all of the, you know, instruments and so forth, so things, computers, so things don't walk away and don't get damaged because they're exposed to the elements. So here's that Ipswich Middle School, High School. So one of the things too is they are very open to listening to what the image of the community is. Natick had a big conversation around that. They wanted their high school to mirror their former high school. And so the new facade of the new high school looks, I'm told, almost identical to the old high school, because that was very important to their community. So the MSBA, listened to that kind of conversation and respected it. And there are lots of common components. This sort of cupola piece is common to many of them, but you again see all the light. I would guess this is probably either a gymnasium or the cafeteria area. Wide corridors. Lighting meets the requirements, which is very important. Obviously, they're all ADA and accessible. Some have tried very hard to. So here's Shrewsbury. Now Shrewsbury High School is one of the older schools. I believe Shrewsbury was finished before MSBA, but it has many of the same elements of the. That we talked about, energy efficiency, the use of light and so forth. This whole front plaza here is their open concept cafeteria. And this is their entire lobby. So all the light comes into the entire lobby. And then this is, quite frankly, the most beautiful administrative wing I've ever seen in my life.
Well, it's a great drive up to it too, because you're
yeah.
just on this long road and then something right there in front of you.
Yeah.
And the guidance suite is to die for.
Is it? If it looks anything like the administrative, absolutely, I can sell it.
Although they managed to do some things wrong with the track.
They did what?
They managed to do some things wrong with the track.
Oh. Here's that interior that we were just talking about. So
Very
you
nice.
saw the front there, so they come in here, and here you have the wide, it's open. And you think about it, and you think, well, why do they do that? This school is 1,800 kids. Anytime, our school is 1,000 kids. Picture our front doors at dismissal or, entry level. It's just crowded. But here you have space. This was done by Lamero Pagano, Worcester, I believe they're out of Worcester. And you see a lot of, sort of office building concept designs in this throughout the school. Can you get them? Can you get this one? It's part of that drive up Perry was talking about. Unfortunately, they're not showing some of the inside pieces, which I thought would have been, much more helpful. Here's Whitman Hanson. Nice exterior shot. Again, that looks like something out of the 1950s. I mean, it's a very traditional looking high school.
I like that.
stately looking. Again, the 3 stories, 1, 2, 3. But they only had 2. Whitman Hanson is the one that they always bring people to. Am I on page 5? Right? Did I get them all? Our high schools? Unfortunately, they didn't take any pictures. I'll just show you this. It's the type of interior space. I know this is for younger kids. But, you know, part of what they talked a lot about with us when we went through the furniture process, they talked about mobility. They talked about using furniture as part of the instructional design. So how do you group kids? You want flexibility, so more furniture should be on wheels or have a light frame so that people can move it without ruining it. The kind of materials that are on the floor. This looks like carpet here, but then there's tile. So there's a mix and a match. Again, the light here. Our high school currently does have this, but in the newer schools, all of them are automatic dimmer system that not only dim based on your use of entry into the room, but they dim based on light coming into the room. So if there's more sunlight coming into the rooms, the lights go down. It's kind of freaky when you're in the room and that happens, but and likewise they go back up, but it becomes darker if the clouds come by or something. So those are some of the energy efficiencies that architects are working with schools to understand and to better put into play. Here's a media center one. I know, again, this is elementary, but I should bring just pictures of our center school so that you can see some of that. We did the same thing. Lots of light into the room, and obviously the traditional, but also places for kids to be in small groups.
In the newer schools, are the windows able to open?
Yes.
It's not all rated,
Yeah.
AC and all that?
Yeah.
Now, a security question. If there's so much windows and so much open viewing, what about security issues for the kids when they do their lockdowns or anything like that?
So there are mechanical shades built in, so they can, put them down on, so forth.
I was just curious because I know they practice those lockdown procedures with the kids and
Right.
they hide in a corner of the room and
Right.
if it's all windows.
I will say that's probably the one area I wish we had convinced our architects to spend more time on, and I would definitely do in a high school conversation, because it was hard to engage our particular architecture firm in that conversation. They, and all due respect to anybody who here is an architect or married to an architect or partnered with an architect, they have a very hard time looking at functionality and design. They really want to look at design and then match it with functionality instead of the other way around. And I thought architects, we were able to finally get there, but it was definitely part of a more difficult conversation that we had. Here's a middle school interior. Again, you see lots of space.
Isn't there a lot of heat loss with all that glass everywhere?
That's a great. It's all obviously energy efficient glass.
But it's still glass.
Yeah. I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak to that. And we haven't been through a full year for our school yet to really collect that data. So.
They have the opposite effect in the winter. Right? They have the opposite effect in the winter, the heat from the sun, right?
Oh, probably in parts of it, yeah, but, unless you've got great recirculation, you're not gonna be able to, it'd be nice if you could heat the whole school that way,
Well, I will tell you that circulation is a huge part of the energy system. And so we're constantly measuring airflow in that building and shifting around air and identifying what air is
This is
coming.
at the center school?
This is at the center school. And of course, it's all computerized, so, Bill Clary pulls it up and, we could get him here to talk about, and when air, if the teacher says, that it feels stale or whatever, they can, on a switch, just
Okay.
push air into that room, fresh air into that room. But it's, so, those pieces definitely get identified. And heat, likewise, we constantly talked about the horror stories of all of our school experiences with cold rooms. And so, that's been a huge, our eyes are on that for our center school to make sure that everything gets balanced. And a big part, I didn't talk about this as much, but a big part of what MSBA requires is what they refer to as commissioning before the building goes online and after the building comes online. And that process essentially is making sure everything works before they walk away. And they did, I think, MSBA did, I think, a very good job of making sure it happened. Again, it's all depending on the provider. I think for the most part, ours did an okay job in terms of commissioning. I would ask for different kinds of expectations up front than what we got. But in the end, we have a very good building. So I think in summary, what I would say is that when we look at some new experiences and new designs and so forth, well, here's an interesting one. Again, a library. Flexibility, comfortable seating, learning commons is a new phrase that you hear a lot in the design process. But obviously, energy efficiency, flexibility, that the long term, because MSBA will tell you they're building the buildings for 50 years, and they want you to see and think ahead. 50 years, how will this building be used? And so, part of that is also, while you can't plan for 50 years of enrollment, you want to be able to plan for, well, where would the addition go if you built, which is what we did at the center school. We have a section of the building where it's pre-ready. We need to have 4 classrooms, up they go. So, and it was built that way. So that's part of the conversation that MSBA is always looking for. How are you making sure that you're ready to do whatever next phase of your life of that building? Which I think is a good conversation for folks to have. So, if we are interested in visiting some of these high schools, I think it would be worthwhile for groups of us to go. I don't know if we could arrange for everybody to go to one, but I think the Whitman-Hanson is well regarded. The obviously Hudson High School, which is right near us, and Shrewsbury High School, which is right near us, I think are definitely 3 high schools that I would recommend people.
Those are all larger enrollment than ours, is that right?
I don't think Whitman-Hanson is larger than us. Shrewsbury is definitely larger than us. And I don't believe Hudson is. I think Hudson is about 850.
Okay.
So Hudson would, I think, be a good match in terms of looking at for that reason. And when I walk through Hudson High School, I don't feel like it's a big high school, but it's got 850 kids. And there are a lot of components of Hudson High School that I think are things we've talked about. It's got a beautiful mini auditorium for presentations. It's built in teams. It's got common areas available off that main horseshoe, so people can gain access to it. Things like that. Instead of our high school where the media center is way to the back and the gym is way, those kinds of spaces are built in more common ways in newer spaces, newer high schools. If possible. So would people like to be part of teams that go visit some of these high schools? All right, so evening be the best thing? Okay. I'm sure it's gonna arrange something with some number of.
Looks like day would be the best, wouldn't it? Because
What's
then you're
that?
gonna get a better appreciation for the outside if we can.
Yeah,
The nighttime.
I mean, we could go later this spring when it's a little lighter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so we can see what's going on the outside. Oftentimes, because MSBA, I should caution you, MSBA only pays for schools. They do not pay for grounds outside of the immediate area. So no fields, no pools. Sorry.
I gave up on that
Yeah.
one. Well said.
So they won't do any of those pieces, but yeah, but it's still things like egress, security. Where would kids go? How would they get out of the building? Those types of things I think are important to see during the light, so you can kind of walk around the building and get an idea of that. Questions about anything? Has anybody visited a high school recently that they would like on a short list?
Bedford High School was interesting. I think it's
Relatively
close to
new.
the same size as
Mhm.
us and relatively new. I don't know if it's one of the model schools or not.
I don't think it was a model school because that was an ad reno. They have not, I don't think they have an ad reno model school.
And do you think that's what ours will be, an ad reno?
I don't know.
If you had to guess,
I mean,
if you had to guess.
it's very conceivable that one of these model schools could be attached to our existing gym and auditorium. I'm really leaping ahead here. The challenge with any of that, though, is there's an existing school right there.
Yeah.
So you've got to figure that into your costs about where kids go to school while you're building. So I mean, there would have to be lots of thought about that.
No, that is a good point, but I remembered you saying something about, like, if they liked part of your building, they would say,
Right. Oh,
you
definitely.
can't have
Yeah.
your building, because some of it's good.
Right. Right. I mean, we would have to, as we did at the center school, we tore down 2/3 of it, but used the other third and used it for a year or more. So I mean, there are ways to work around that, and so those types of things could happen. I just, again, I'm not an engineer to know. It may be conceivable that we could eliminate the area where our cafeteria, administrative offices, that middle piece, and we build a 3-story building right there, and it would all fit. It may work. I don't know. And then go to school in those portables plus those 2 academic unit wings. That may work. And for a short, they put these schools up within 18 months. So that's 2 summers in a school year. So you're in by the start of the next school year. So I mean, it's fast.
That is fast.
Yeah. So those are the types of things that people would have to look at, and obviously they would look at, because things like demolition, where kids have to go to school during the time period of whatever is impacted for an ad reno or a new school, all have to be factored into costs, and they'll come out on the bottom line quicker than sort of the aesthetic or functionality component too. So if it's cheaper to build a brand new high school with an auditorium and a gym because of all those costs, they're probably going to lean toward doing that.
Well, that might work out.
So
Was the gas pipeline a cost factor in the field renovations, or is it?
no, because it's all to one side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But, so all the construction equipment and all that vibration and all that stuff just had no effect on it at all? All right, good.
None of it at all. No. The other, I mentioned, I know energy efficiency quite a bit. They'll want to look for the most efficient energy source for the high school. So if there are long-term plans for the town of Bolton, for example, to eventually get a gas pipeline into the town, or to get, you know, access to LNG or propane, you know, they'll want us to explore those kinds of possibilities. We had it didn't hold us up, but we had some of those issues in Stowe around water. So that
They
was,
wouldn't let something like that be part of the project, though, would they?
well, they'll let, obviously, once on the property, all the piping to the school, they let be part of the project, but they
Yeah.
won't, you know, they won't let it, you know, if the pipeline is off 110, you know, 110, they won't,
That's where it
pi-
is,
they
yeah.
won't pay for it to come up the street.
All right.
So those are the things, but like I say, they'll definitely want to have those conversations about, you know, long term, is it in the best interest of the school, the town, whatever, to make that happen, and they'll probably want to have conversations with the town about, you know, why aren't you making that happen? You know, if it's economical for the community and so forth. So those are the things. I know geothermal has come up before. A number of years ago, we had a lot of folks interested in geothermal, and we are sitting on a good aquifer here, and that is something that you know, would be exciting. I don't know if they would pay for something that expensive because of the return on that, but it's definitely something that could work. Especially where, you know, in this day and age, most buildings are also air conditioned, and so we want a very cost efficient system. So.
And I don't know, but solar, I mean, we're in this whole big, giant open area.
Yeah.
You would think we'd get,
Solar would probably be
Full
something
solar.
explored. Yep. The center school is plumbed to do solar on a small scale. We just opted not to do it.
we got a lot of roof line up there that,
I mean, for heat or for electricity?
At center school? Good question.
When you say plumbed, it sounded like you were talking about a hot water system.
Yeah. It must be just for electricity then. 'Cause I don't think we have the tubing for hot water or for water. It must be just electricity. So. Any questions? I'll explore more. There might be others here that I'm not aware of. The first one we looked at, and this was Ashland, that would be another one that would definitely be there. Again, Natick.
They have
Natick
some,
is a good one because it's either going on now or just finished. I think it just finished.
Need it? It's
Yeah,
like
okay.
a year. It's been a year.
It's been a year, so.
They have some pretty interesting videos of the construction and the end result and so forth on this site too.
Which tab?
Yes, and that. I'm not sure how I got that.
There's
While I was in the Hudson High School model school,
okay.
and you know what? I went through your school to link your school,
Yeah.
and then found Hudson over on the left. There you go. And you find Hudson in that. There you go. And then up under news and events, the first one, just link the school video, and it might take a minute, but there's a whole bunch of videos out there about it.
I'd like to thank you for taking a few minutes to learn more about Hudson High School and our model school program. The program adapts and reuses design elements from already constructed schools, using design using fossil structures during the design phase. Our model school program has already saved taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. At the MSBA, we apply innovations and common sense solutions to school construction. This saves taxpayers money while providing affordable, sustainable, and educationally sound schools for our children.
I'm Carl Brown. I'm an architect with the MSBA, and high school's kitchen and mechanical rooms were undersized in order to reduce cost, so when the subsequent schools were built based on Hudson, they are enlarged to their original size. Same thing with classrooms. They're quite small in this building, 800 square feet each. We require classrooms that are more to the 800 or 900 square foot range.
Part of our educational goal is to give students a bigger voice in their school. And if we're going to do that, we need to have some place where we can hear them. So we have some large group meeting rooms. We have a main auditorium. We have a mini auditorium or a mini theater. At the end of the gym, we have a dance studio, and then there are 2 pods in the building that can accommodate about 125 students.
This school is arranged in a pod configuration with 3 pods along a central corridor. The pods are surrounded by classrooms on 2 floors, 8 classrooms on each floor. Each classroom pod surrounds this learning area, where they can bring multiple classrooms into a central learning space.
There are 3 areas, 3 pods in the building. Around this room, on the first and second floor, there's a series of 16 classrooms, 8 downstairs and 8 upstairs.
When this school is adapted to other sites, they can add or subtract classrooms by adding or subtracting pods. Hudson has 3 pods with 2 floors. We use the same plan in Tewksbury where there are 3 floors with 2 pods. So the building can be adjusted bigger or smaller depending on the number of students and the size of the site.
This is an interior room. There are 10 classes on one side, classrooms all around it. Upstairs are science rooms on one side, classrooms all around it. But by putting in the skylights and creating this particular area, the natural light comes right into the room, and you don't feel that this is a bar. Now, I have to stop by here just so that you can take a look at how the architects provided an enormous amount of light into areas that are frequently used. Obviously, this is a stairwell from the first floor to the second floor, and at any given time, we have 4 passings during the day when 1,200 students move. So this is a pretty busy area, but it's sort of a welcoming area. It's not dark, dingy hallway.
So you'll notice in the library and the media center, librarian's desk has complete visual access to the entire library, so she can maintain control of the students even in a very large room such as this. Also, of course, the tall windows and the great amounts of natural light in the library. This is a typical 1,200 square foot science lab. Typically, they're shared with an adjoining lab with a planning area in the middle, which is used for preparation of chemicals and storing chemicals. You can see the fume hoods here and the peninsula workstation. So these tables and desks are arranged in a lecture configuration with a central teacher's demonstration table for running lab experiments. When a lab like this is adapted to the new standards, one option would be to push the exterior wall out so that it gains several hundred square feet, 240 square feet if we have and as well the prep room will get bigger by quite a bit.
Overall, we are a great community building here, and we're very pleased with how it's turned out.
So you saw, like, for example, the library configuration. I mean, again, in that particular library, the librarian has a good canvas of the entire room, whereas our librarian has to walk around the entire room in order to be able to see, at least in that given moment, what's going on at that given time. So things like that are hard. So I'll reach out to these folks and see if we can't look to schedule something a little bit later after a little warmer, light. We spring forward next week, so.
Next week?
I think it's next week.
I think it's 10. Really?
10?
9th or the 10th.
9th to 10th, it's early.
Is it gonna get rain?
I know.
Yeah.
Does that happen? I know.
Did they mention Tewksbury High School on that?
They did,
blurb?
yes.
I didn't realize. Is that a model school too?
That's a model school as well, and that just completed as well. I think they may have just finished and been in there 1 year as well. In that high school, I happen to have done some work in that high school, the old high school. It was a sprawling, one-story,
I went to that high school.
so you know it well, and didn't have much technology in 2011, I'll tell you. And so they built on, I believe, their existing fields,
Yeah,
and
in the
then
back, yeah.
and then tore down their school, and
Yeah.
then put
I
up their
have not
fields.
been in it since it's been opened, and when I saw that, I gotta go
Yeah.
back and look now.
Yeah. It's the same firm that did Hudson built that school as well,
Okay.
the same architect, and they also did our center school, SMMA.
Oh.
So they're quite excited to have that model school. They designed Hudson High School. They actually were not the architects chosen to go through the building phase of it, though. Comments about some of the high schools that you saw in those videos and pictures? I mean, does it raise some questions about what we have compared to what those are?
You keep saying the center school in Stowe, is that what you keep
Yes.
mentioning? Is that the one that's been newly redone?
Yes.
And I think I've been in there for basketball for my
Mhm.
kids. Is that like a cafeteria and a gym kind of combined or next to each other?
They're
or-
next to each other. There's a folding electronic wall.
Oh, so they can put the wall out,
Yes.
or they
They do.
leave it apart? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
it's really nice.
Yeah. Again, the one thing we emphasized a lot was the light that we wanted for lots of spaces, and I think they did a fantastic job around that. The one area where I wish we pushed harder on was we really needed a separate entrance for the public into those two spaces, because now they have to walk in the main lobby to get
Yeah.
there, and it just doesn't work.
But that main lobby is beautiful.
It is beautiful, yes. So, I picked that furniture up.
Oh, my goodness. Because I still don't have air conditioning in Bolton.
And I've been here in 1997, you would have.
I'll tell you.
I believe that.
I'll tell you that story later.
Did you have music for that?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm gonna give Michael a break.
It's expensive. So, the other piece that we had on our agenda that we talked about last time was, we tried to kind of figure out what our methodology was. So this is a draft. Let's cut it up, redo however people want to talk about it. I'm fine with. I don't particularly have. So I just tried to put it down in writing so that we keep ourselves on task through this process, and try to understand what it was that we're trying to do. So and then as we're going along, obviously we're trying to compile a report. So we want to pull this information as best we can into writing and get it consolidated. So as that is general thinking, and please add to this as we go. The data that we want to collect, obviously, is what is our current space, what are our enrollment projections, and what are the current programs that we offer in the existing high school, and obviously, what is the staffing associated with that, so that we understand the implications of the needs of space. From that, I think we need to start asking ourselves, what are the plans for programs that we need to have because of the enrollment projections? What have we already identified as program space that isn't meeting our expectations or meeting our needs? And then we have, over the next 5-10 years, plans for other kinds of programs, whether we call it expansion programs, new programs, however we want to categorize it. we're going to have to add programs. An example is, for example, special education programming. 10 years ago, our high school didn't have but one substantially separate classroom, and now we have 5. So those are classrooms that are no longer available to other kinds of instructional needs. And
Because they're dedicated to special ed?
because they're now dedicated to special needs. Those are cost-effective ways to do that, because those same students would have gone out of district prior. So now they're coming to our high school. So so there are trade-offs. So we need to start looking at, I know Perry has some plans for different kinds of program options as we go forward. We've already identified some of the deficiencies of the science labs, both in terms of numbers and the current existing space that they are in. And then there's the condition, I should add the condition of the space. Because I think that's still an underlying issue that we need to contend with. And obviously we'll continue to address them as they seem prudent to do so. And then I moved from there. Tell me if there's a missing step there, but I moved from there to, well, the initial question out of our first meeting was, how does space influence student performance? How do we define this notion that how do we define what the return on investment would be? How do we help people understand that yes, we have all these issues at our high school, but is it going to be worth a X $1 million project? And if so, how do we define that?
It might be interesting to, when we go visit these schools that have recently been done, to ask them to say what's happened in the 1, 2, 3 years since your project was done with your SAT scores or your overall grades or stuff like that.
Yep. No, I think you're right.
Well, what's the scope of space? So I would think that there would be a lot of other sort of dynamics associated with new construction that would affect those kind of metrics. So, science lab fittings, technology introduction to the facility. Where's the scope of this start and finish? Is it really just space, or is it those?
It's all inclusive.
Okay.
It's all inclusive, most definitely. I mean, we not only want the right amount of square footage, we want the right square footage. There are definitely space needs in terms of everything from storage right up through and inclusive of instructional spaces that are needed, just because it would facilitate a better schedule. There's going to be a time when people are going to say, well, we have enough square footage if you put the number of kids that we have into that number of square footage. But when you also then add to it, we have to have a schedule that runs efficiently, so that we're not adding staff or not having staff because we don't have enough space for them. Then that's a part of the metric of deciding, well, you need more space, or different spaces at least, at the very least. And one of the spaces that I think we're sorely lacking is space for teachers to do planning and collaborative work. They really do not have effective space for that kind of thing. And because slowly we're going to be chipping away at making those classrooms. And that's just the nature of it.
It's going to have to happen this next year.
So those are some of the student performance components that I added. I don't know if people have other metrics that they want to look at. I actually thought of putting down something about the other kinds of spaces, the outdoor spaces and athletics and so forth, but then I thought, no, that gets too squishy. I don't think that has anything to do with what goes on inside the building, but I don't know if other people do.
Would it be helpful to look at kids' school choice, not leaving the district? I know when Clinton built their high school, we suddenly stopped getting Clinton kids coming to Neshoba in the rates that we had gotten before. And with the new AMSCA, the new Math Science Academy, pulling because of their STEM facilities.
Right. Definitely. So when we go, so then the things that we think schools might have a positive impact, I think it's, we had an email conversation with the architect that did the Hudson High School and did the Center School project, and he shared some of the positive outcomes of the building project at the Quincy High School. Did I share that? I'll share that email with you. These were some of the things that he talked about. They, within the next 3 years, they had reduced dropout rate, they had improved graduation rate, lots of different things. You know, he wasn't saying they're directly attributable to it, but this is what happened after the building was built. So people could make their own judgments about that. Then we'll visit the other high schools. We'll obviously have some data tool to be able to collect some data around that. And then we begin to start looking at all this data and try to understand what it's telling us in terms of what it's telling us. And then obviously, you know, we're going to have to determine a method to analyze the data at some point, and then truly determine what data we're going to use. And then from those statements of fact, from that data analysis, that data dump, we'll write the recommendations and reach a consensus on the ones that we can all agree to. Sound like a good flow?
Just a question. Like, I know at one of the, I guess, one of the first meeting, there was some discussion regarding also kind of what, you know, looking a little more towards the future of, you know, whether it's STEM or what are the colleges looking for, and kind of some of those kinds of things. Yes. Is that, you know, kind of, I don't know, kind of whether that's an impact area thing. It's not set criteria, but it's kind of looking for the future, kind of.
Let me put it up here. What are colleges looking for? I'll work on the wording. Generally what you're saying is a good point.
I don't know if this affects just Bolton or if it affects Stowe and Lancaster too, but Minuteman, where Bolton has a relationship with for vocational oriented students, is also starting a building project. And from my point of view of living in Bolton, the worst thing that could happen is for these two things to either be back to back or at the same time.
Yes.
And does Lancaster or Stowe also use Minuteman? They do.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Why is Minuteman build it? Like, aren't they striving for enrollment?
Well, I don't know. I think they're looking to renovate. I don't think I hadn't heard that they were looking to build new, but maybe they are at this point.
Well,
An extensive renovation.
Yeah.
It's not let's put 1 or 2 classrooms up.
Right. Oh no. It's
our
full
physical
modernization.
plant is 50 to 60 years old, and we're losing students to other districts because of this, and they just renegotiated the regional agreement about how capital costs would be allocated in preparation for this. So they're going down the path of doing the same thing. And obviously, all of our towns will be tagged for some portion of that, depending on what the new agreement is. But it doesn't affect our criteria at all. But as people involved in some form of town government, I think we need to keep that. It's got to be considered part in our packaging when we're selling this to the rest of the town.
Yeah, you raise a good point. It's not just necessarily that, it's also Stowe's looking at a new library or something to do with their library, a community center, a fire station, and I think Lancaster is looking to do the renovation of their town offices. So there are other
Capital
competing
projects,
needs that are going on. So let's get that on there too. So people understand what the timeline is.
I have 2 questions about that. Let's say, how do they decide, how does Minuteman or how do they decide how much Lancaster or Bolton or Stowe has to contribute to their renovation costs? Is it based on the population, like
Okay.
if 5 or 10% of our kids go there?
All I know is that the towns renegotiated the cost apportionment agreement. What that is, even for Bolton, I don't know the specifics of. Our town manager does. I don't know who's representing, are you from Lancaster?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I think our town manager is also representing Lancaster there. I don't know if he's representing Stowe, but, if Orlando doesn't know, Orlando can get the information from Don.
I think Orlando does. Orlando was part of the committee.
Right.
So.
But I don't know the specifics of it, I just know that, again, they renegotiated the whole cost apportionment, capital and operating stuff in expectation of making this, of undertaking this project.
Don't we still have to vote to approve that?
Yes.
Yes, each
Oh,
town,
yes.
The renegotiation?
all 16 towns have to approve, or it's not
All
effective.
Yes.
unanimous?
Yes,
Oh, it's not even a majority?
no.
They've worked very hard to satisfy both the large towns and the small towns. And they basically have an agreement that nobody's happy with. So, everybody's taking, nobody's happy with it. So no one feels that someone else is taking advantage of it. Or everyone feels everyone else is taking advantage of them. So it's, it's equitably distributed. But yeah, that does have to be voted on.
Where is Minuteman?
It's in Lexington. It's right. It's not far, I think, from the intersection of Route 2 and 128.
2A right off of
2A and
128.
128. Yeah.
Do you know who started first? Does it matter? Did we have our idea first, or did they, or does
They-
it not matter?
They've been at it for a long
They
time.
have been. Does it even matter who had started the process first? As far as funding goes for
Oh,
towns?
as far as funding goes, no, but what it will mean is that they are already in the queue with MSBA,
Oh.
so their project schedule will be certainly before ours, and they'll need to have a vote among the communities
So
before
they may
ours.
get approval before we do, which could impact us?
Sure.
Which is what you're saying?
Yep.
That's possible.
Okay.
And I think that's a reason for us to go back and make sure everyone's aware, so no one can, say 3 years from now, geez, that's a surprise,
Yeah,
that kind
no,
of
that's a
thing.
good point, yeah.
They also had some pretty inadequate, determined to be inadequate
Oh,
facilities, right?
absolutely.
And so they had, it was almost, if I recall, almost deemed a crisis of some sort, and so.
There was a section of their building that was
Yeah.
actually condemned, yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
That would be a problem.
that's why they're
They
in the queue.
recognize Yeah. But again, that was a building built in the 70s. A lot of it is open concept, and they've built up to close it, and so now they have HVAC issues, and so.
Why are we part of something so far away?
Oh, that's a good question, and I can't give a good answer.
Because you
It's-
can't be near 16 towns.
Yeah, right.
Especially with Assabet, what, 12,
Right.
8 miles down the road?
Yeah,
That's-
it was legislatively organized, and it goes back to 1974, 72 when they organized.
It's also very expensive to leave,
Yes, it is.
more than
Oh, right.
anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know if Assabet was even in place when we joined Minuteman, but it's very expensive to leave.
Really?
It's really too bad, because I do think there are a number of students who would opt to do
Yes.
So far,
if it wasn't so far.
Yep.
So. peach and blue. So maybe for our next meeting, we can start by really kind of tackling this and maybe divvying up some responsibilities and tackling the collection of the data and so forth. As our task. What are some other agenda items that we should consider?
Well, do we want to make intermediate presentations to towns or the different, do we want to go to the different towns basically with the same presentation in terms of updates and stuff like that?
Okay.
Do you think we have enough to update them on?
Well, no, you know, when,
At regular intervals.
at regular intervals, you know, maybe we should, and not necessarily tonight, but just say, okay, once we get through this portion of it, it's appropriate to go around and start talking it up a little bit.
Right. The original sort of mission statement asked for a June report out.
Yeah.
So,
Well, even if we could put something that April,
Yeah.
it would be just to show good faith in collaboration.
Yeah, because June, you're gonna have a lot of people distracted with summer activities and out of town and stuff like that.
Not with all the snow days we've been having, we'll still be in school. Maybe we can hit in places like Ohio.
I know, Harry or Jody, as part of NEASC, have you collected some historical data around things like SATs and things like that? Have you had to do that? And is there any historical data that you're putting as part of the self-study that might be valuable to us to
I'm
take
trying
a
to
look
think if
at?
there are indicators that specifically ask for those trends. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
One thing that might be worthwhile for us to see, and if you haven't shared it with the staff, is our 2003 report.
We have looked through the 2003 report
Okay.
in different subcommittees.
I don't know, was there anything about the facility in that?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember.
So maybe we could just see maybe the recommendations
Yeah.
or something.
I think, weren't we in the midst of the building process, didn't we?
We would have been.
We would have just
We
finished.
just finished it when they
because
came.
We kicked the visit out for a year because we
Yeah.
had classrooms in the gym.
Okay.
So we must have just finished.
Right, but I almost want to say there was something in there about the science labs then.
But there probably were. I think the
Yeah.
science labs are pretty massively out of date.
Yeah.
When you talk about a new building, I wonder if things like attendance is affected.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if student behavior is affected. I think that, you know, there's, when you were looking at the model schools, I remember being in Shrewsbury's library, and it's gorgeous. It's a big open area. Kids are working at tables with laptops, working together. It's quiet. It felt like a college library. I mean, so kind of I don't know how you would measure that productive use of the space, but if we're going to visit schools, to say things like, how productive are your kids in their learning commons? You know, what's it like here? I think kids are kids no matter where you go.
Right.
That is a place where the space is a function of how productive
Yeah.
it happens. I
wouldn't
mean,
that
look at your
show-
libraries that have been redone in town and look at how magnificent they are and how well used they are. You know?
That's a good point.
I don't know how you measure it, but
I don't know.
it's sort of on the same line, respectful of the surroundings, right? So you don't have the eggings and all that kind of stuff going on, right? I don't know
So
how you measure it, but
I think it's anecdotal data of asking, you
Discipline
know,
referrals, we've got those to look at. And, you know, we could, as our baseline, and then we could ask them for theirs, 'cause
Right,
it's all
what
state
was
data,
their
but-
experience from the old building to the new building?
Yep.
Even if it's not numbers data, if you gather that subjective opinion from multiple schools that have renovated,
Mhm.
I think it does make a difference.
I'm wondering if the building looks more like an office building, like some of the pictures you were showing, if the kids act more professional, if you will,
Mm.
like the surroundings are conducive to that rather
Right.
than a dumpy school. Not that our school is
Right.
dumpy,
No,
but
I
you know what I
hear you.
mean?
Yes,
Maybe they
yes.
wouldn't care as much, but maybe they'd start acting more the part.
Right, right. I think that's true for staff. I think staff feel more respected when they are in a space that they feel helps them do their job.
Yeah.
I've seen that as a teacher when I moved into a new building from truly a dumpy old building. You know, it was a breath of fresh air. You know, you weren't tripping over each other. You could find things. You know, things were labeled. I mean, it was a wonderful experience.
I think it does something to your mind.
It
You know what I
does.
mean?
Yeah, it's like moving to a new house. You know, it's like, wow, there are places for those things. Well, I put down teacher retention, but maybe it's teacher.
Job satisfaction.
Yeah.
Teacher working conditions.
I think in a new building, there's less stress, you know,
I
and
agree.
clearly there's no way to manage that, but just the general stress level of everybody
Mm-hmm.
is down.
Right. High during the construction phase, low after.
If they stick it out.
Right.
Student pride.
Student pride.
Yeah. In a nutshell, you
Yep.
said it better. There you go, student.
Yeah, I think those are good ones. Okay. So, next meeting, date. Everybody got a calendar to look at? So if we're looking for roughly the last week in March, so we're talking about March 26th.
I don't want to look at an old-fashioned calendar here.
Does that work for folks?
Same place.
Same place?
Maybe I need an upgrade to my calendar.
Toss them
That's your
in.
PAD.
There you go. 7 still work for everybody? Good? All right. So 7 o'clock, March 26th.
Can you possible to get the email copy of this?
You bet.
Give to your other people?
Absolutely.
Um,
All right. Closing comments or questions? Great. Good meeting. All right, thank you.